It is perhaps a good thing about our film festivals that the expectations aroused on the inaugural session need not necessarily be borne out in the body of the festival. More so this year because the inaugural was quite a star parade, and matching that through the festival would have been quite a problem, both in terms of what the festival ought to be and what it could have been.
This is a story with which all of us are familiar with over the years. In fact, this kind of a fiasco has become a part of the whole festival culture, film festival culture in India. And so, if they're flying the coop was quite inevitable, because most of them in any case are not interested in serious cinema. And of course, some of them who would like to see films, have the additional problem of getting mobbed, and this causes inconvenience to others and people who are interested in watching films. So in a way, I think it's a good they came and did their tamasha and went away. But fun and gaiety are a part of festival, so one doesn't grudge the participation of stars and other luminaries, but I think it should be done in a little more subtle and a more interesting manner.
Just midway into the first week of the festival, it might still be too early to run an assessment of the entries. However, there have been some brilliant films, some not so brilliant ones, but the truly arresting ones this first 3 days have been Babette's Feast from Denmark, directed by Gabriel Axel, set in the 19th century, a very quaint story treated brilliantly about a lottery ticket won and how it changes the entire life of a person and a village. And the third film, of course, is from that festival favorite, Federico Fellini, who this year comes perhaps with his very best film after Amarcord, as far as I think, and that's a film called Ginger and Fred, about two aging tap dancers who are invited to a television show in this day and time, and the entire culture of television, or the subculture of television, is parodied by Fellini brilliantly. The very affable personality of John Schlesinger has proved quite a crowd puller here at the festival. There is, of course, an entire retrospective section devoted to the Schlesinger films. Schlesinger himself seems a man with divided loyalties. One doesn't know quite whether to place him as a theatre director or as a cinema director, or for that matter, whether to place him in the UK or the USA. He keeps shuttling between these two places and these two interests as far as his career is concerned. Nevertheless, all of Schlesinger's films have that unique Schlesinger brand, shall we call it, which critics and film buffs are quite aware of and are taken in by. The Schlesinger retrospective, which began yesterday, has been quite popular, and even more popular perhaps was his opening film, Madame Suzatska, which was the inaugural film, and which won Shirley MacLaine in the lead role as the music teacher in that film, the Best Actress Award at Venice in 1988.
It's a film I like making. It's not a big film, it's a small, intimate story, but I think it deals with things that are eternal in a sense. It deals with, first of all, one of my great loves is music, and it's the first time I've ever been able to use music so totally in a film. It's about music, and it's about love in all its forms. It's about artistic standards and selling out and ambition, and it's about a boy who's just reached puberty finding out what everything is about round him, in a sense. So the themes, I believe, are quite big ones, but whether it's not a big film in so many words, no.
How did Madame Suzatska actually come about? Do you think you were lucky to get it?
There is always an element of luck in anything. You can't get anything just because of talent. In this industry, there's so much amount of luck. It was so lucky that my father heard about the audition, because he was in my uncle's office at the time, and a leaflet came through the door, and luckily he just read it. It would have just gone in the bin, the piece of paper, but luckily my dad read it, and he telephoned me, said, look, come to London, there's an audition. And at the audition I met John Schlesinger, and it sort of happened from there.
Did you have to learn a lot for the role, except the piano bit, of course?
Well, the piano is the main thing. I had about 3 months of training with a pianist called Jonty Solomon. We spent about 300 hours on the piano. So that was the main that took up most of the time. You've got to learn the script and things, but that isn't difficult because you rehearse the scene so many times that it just comes to you.
The other film of note here is the film which probably set Schlesinger going on his career, and that's a film called Midnight Cowboy, his very first film which put him as a name to reckon with on the map of world-class cinema. The Indian Panorama section, a permanent fixture now with film festivals in India, is also a kind of barometer on the level of excellence of Indian cinema year after year. And in this context, it perhaps reinforces the trend which we have noticed over the last 3 or 4 years of a return to the narrative form in Indian cinema, or at least in the new or what's called the parallel Indian cinema. Those old experimentations with pure form of pushing the front lines of experimental cinema have apparently vanished. And today there is a return to narrative on a more solid, on a sounder footing. Ever since he started out with his film Ma Bhumi, Gautam Ghosh has been making repeated waves year after year with each film of his. And this year we have another entry from him in the Panorama section, that's Antarjali Yatra. Gautam, this film is based on, as I understand, on the novel of Kamal Kumar Majumdar.
Yes.
How did you adapt the novel, and how did you recreate this 19th century setting? Did you actually have to put up a set, or did you shoot in a natural surrounding in the rural areas?
Well, actually, 19th century Bengal always fascinated me, you know. It was a great period of transition from the dark medieval period to the education of Western science and all that. And the film was really set in the background of 19th century, just after the Sati right was banned by Lord Bentinck in 1829. But then, still it was continuing underground almost, because it was a big blow on the system or on the Hindu hierarchy. No, we shot the entire film at the location, but the entire thing was built. The temple, I must say, it's almost, we had to do a kind of landscape architecture, shaping up the entire area, the land. And since
this was somewhere near the Ganges, where exactly
Ganges.
Which location
it's
was it?
Almost at the mouth of Ganges.
The mouth of Ganges,
yeah, right. So, and we really needed a God-forsaken places like that, where shouldn't be any sign of modern civilization. So entire thing was shot at the location.
Cinema is a very strong medium which should be used for, in a way, upliftment of certain values of the society and certain good cause, or certain lost values in the society, in the modern society today. And Trishagni conveys something like that. And that's why I think it's good cinema. That's what I feel about this film, my film.
It's your debut making film in Hindi?
That's right.
Yes. And you were also associated with Doordarshan.
That's right. I was an announcer with Bombay Doordarshan for quite some time, and then the newsreader.
All of us, of course, know G. Aravindan as a feature filmmaker of great repute. He's won several laurels here and abroad. Perhaps most of us may not realize that he's equally at home and equally brilliant as far as documentary filmmaking goes. And he's come up now with a rather more abstruse concept of the Ardhanarishwara, or the Shakti Shiva principle, in his documentary film called Sahaja, which is featured in the Panorama section this year.
The focus in the 12th International Film Festival this year is on Chinese cinema. The focus section was inaugurated yesterday with a screening of the film Red Sorghum, made by Zhang Yimou. Now, Zhang Yimou is a phenomenal character in Chinese cinema. This is his first film, and it won the won the Golden Bear at the International Film Festival in Berlin last year. In addition to that, he is also an actor, and in the first film in which he acted, Old Well, he got the prize for the best actor at the Tokyo Film Festival a few months before Berlin. In fact, Zhang Yimou started as a cameraman and shot two major award-winning Chinese films, The Yellow Earth and The One and the Eight. Internationally, in the last few years, Chinese cinema has become the talking point. For a few years earlier, it was only Japanese cinema that was known from Asia, and then Indian cinema. And now, today, it is Chinese cinema all over the world. At every festival is China that is dominating the scene, at least from Asia. The first of these new young Chinese filmmakers to make an international reputation was Chen Kaige. His film Yellow Earth swept the international scene. It ran for many weeks in London, was lauded at every festival, and it was shot by Zhang Yimou. His second film, The Big Parade, or The Big Military Parade, is in our festival here this year. He himself had been sent to the countryside when he was 15 and worked in a rural farm, and then spent some years in the army before going back to Beijing and joining the Film Academy.
I'm very glad that my film Desperation is going to show to my friend of Indian. Some people say it's a detective film, and some say it's a thriller. Some say it's a story on social problems, and some even say it's a love story, a man who running after another man. Maybe, I don't know. So I felt quite a loss what kind of the film it really is. Anyway, let's call it a film, just a film.
Another permanent feature of the film festival, the film market, is already bustling with activity. Organized by the NFDC, it has 24 different companies featuring this time, and 2 foreign, France and Korea. Besides, of course, government, public sector, the films division, the Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal governments, and a number of private companies. 40 feature films are entered in the film market, 70 Indian films have been entered, and 100 short films and documentaries. Of course, the highlight of the film market this year is the stall by Doordarshan. For the first time, Doordarshan has over the years developed its own repertoire of excellent documentaries, features and short films, all of which have been catalogued and offered to those who would wish to buy them for screenings abroad. Architecture and cinema must apparently have a lot in common. The number of filmmakers who have come in from architecture demands a close scrutiny of this whole phenomenon. And one of the first examples is that of Fritz Lang, who was featured as the early master in this International Film Festival. His first film in 1919, that's The Half-Breed, a significant film, followed up in 1926 with his second important film, and perhaps the most significant film in the silent era, as far as Lang is concerned, Metropolis. That's made in 1926. Well, besides Schlesinger, there are 2 other retrospectives. One of Lina Wertmüller, the well-known filmmaker from Italy, and her inaugural film in the retrospective section was a film of love and of anarchy. And as the title suggests, it is about an anarchist and of an orderly person, both of them set in Mussolini's Italy, one wanting to kill Mussolini, the other not so sure. And the emotions of the 2 are played out in a brilliant fantasy called Love and Anarchy.